I would hold a Doors Open Day or join in the Doors Open Day event every year, and people would come, and a number of those people had been there in childhood. They'd been friends of Willie's sister Evelyn at Craigie School, so they were coming around to have another look. And that was interesting, because obviously they were talking about, these were people in their 80s, so it was a long, long time ago. I mean, it was 70 plus years ago. But they had certain memories. I had always thought that the front panelled room was some sort of office, and it was certainly used as a study while I was there, but they said, no, that was the parlour, that was the front room. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Soutar's sitting room is across the way, but that was the front room. And when Evelyn had birthday parties, that room with the panelling is where they'd be held. Right. And then they would so they'd play their party games and things, and then at a certain point it would be time to show their party pieces to Willie. Mm-hmm. And so they'd traipse next door and sing him a song or recite him a poem or whatever. So that was quite interesting. And it was quite interesting, their memories of him, which were, certainly in one case, they were absolutely terrified of this man with all his clothes on, sitting in bed, you know. So that was the sort of ordeal of the birthday party. And when it was over and done with, they could get on with enjoying themselves again. So
I've certainly heard that people who were taken, not for a birthday party, but just taken with their mother to visit, and it's this scary man. Yeah, the wild, thick, bushy hair, wearing the tie. Yeah, must have been scary.
Yeah, but he, I mean, you know all the stories about how many visitors he had, or rather how many visits he had. They would be repeat visits from the neighbourhood. I mean, I think he was a bit of a local celebrity in some ways. You know, that was definitely the impression I got. I once met I was doing an event at a library, and in the audience was again a woman in her 80s, quite a formidable woman with a very distinctive, deep, beautiful voice. And she'd been an actress and had performed at Perth Theatre, and she was friendly with Jack Gilchrist, who painted the expressionist portrait of Willie, you know, the very sort of modern-looking one. And he was a fireman, a conscientious objector who was working as a fireman in Perth, and he was friends, probably a boyfriend actually, of the actress. And he always used to say, "Oh, I'll take you up to Wilson Street to meet Willie Soutar," but it never happened. So, but I mean, you know, he was, you know, for people in the arts, he was someone that you might take strangers to meet because he was a notable person, an interesting person, a cultured person, you know.
Yeah.
I think through meeting the friends of Evelyn who were still around, in particular this woman, Vera Bissett, a wonderful woman who is now sadly dead, but I think lived till she was over 90, you got a sense of continuity. I mean, yes, their memories of childhood were a long time ago and were quite patchy, but they'd remained in Perth, and it was quite easy to say something about one of the shops at Craigie Cross, and suddenly they'd be reminiscing about the other shops at Craigie Cross, and the grocer's was run by a Mr. Darling, in whose house I now live, you know. And that sense that the world Willie knew, there was a bridge between that world and the world we know now, you know, the world that still exists. And I found that quite exciting, really, and inspiring. You know.
Because that world does seem now, for me certainly, it seems so different. The shops that they mention are no longer there. The habits of going to visit and going in your Sunday best, that's kind of gone as well. And yet for them it's was a living memory.
It was. I think things survive in the culture. I mean, Perth is a well-mannered place still, you know, a douce place. And you saw that in those old ladies. I mean, Vera Bissett always immaculately turned out. And one of those old ladies who was lucky enough not to shrink. So she was tall and broad and imposing looking right to the end, you know. And it was an event to spend time with her, you know. She was a tremendous person. I remember what she used to say about Evelyn was, she said there was always something slightly mysterious about her, you know. And I think that had to do with her arriving from Australia and the murkiness of her background. Presumably there wasn't much talk about the fact that she'd lost both her parents so young, you know. And then another woman, a woman who was in my writers' group, a woman called Margaret Gillis-Brown, I remember, knew friends who knew Evelyn and the Soutars. I think there was one of Evelyn's friends was somehow connected with one of Margaret Gillis-Brown's friends, and she said about Evelyn that she was a naughty girl, and in the end was sent away to school in Dundee, I think she said, you know, for her. And there was certainly talk about, you know, that people who've come to the house have said, oh yes, Evelyn, you know, there was quite a lot of conflict with old Mr. Soutar, with Jack Soutar, you know, and he would lock her in a cupboard when she was naughty, and once she climbed down the drain pipe, you know, and got out.
I've heard it said she was lively. Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, these things are all very ordinary, you know, any family might have these things, but it's you know, it's an extra insight into the Soutar family that, you know, they were no exceptions in this case.
What about Alice Henderson? That's another lady that you met.
Yeah, she was another one of this little group of girls who were at Craigie School who were friends of Evelyn's, and she also came and had her reminiscences of parties in the front room. I'm not sure I got much more out of her than that. There was always the hope that if you sat down with people and really, you know, prodded, you would generate more. You know, we're all like that, really. We tend to distill our memories of entire friendships down to one or two key scenes, and the rest tends to go, you know, the rest recedes, but I think it's still there. So there was always a hope that more might be got out of her, but, you know, it wasn't, I didn't manage, and sadly I think it's too late now, you know.
Yeah.